Greetings, awesomes. How we doing? All right. So here in this video, we're going to talk about the sections of quote unquote bad news messaging or bad news correspondence or delivering that kind of news. We briefly spoke about this in the previous video and just kind of talking about Project One in general. Really at the core of it, we're trying to think about how we can deliver any kind of news for that matter, where it's not just something as simple as, oh, hey, here's the information and just boom, right? We need to think about our audience. We need to think about the purpose of why we're writing this email. It's also interesting when we think about the audience. The audience isn't necessarily, especially in business to business type communications, or business to customer, even though it's business to business, it's still individual to individual, right? And whether it's a customer or not, they could be a supplier. It could be someone who's doing business with you or has done business with your company. So it's important that we really kind of take stock and note of, especially if we're writing in a business format, while it's us writing, we are representing our company. We might represent our department, our manager or set of managers or staff or whomever that it is. But at the end of the day, it's the company that you're representing. So this is a really, really, really strong skill to have of delivering any kind of news to somebody where it never sounds, that you're being critical, right? In this, especially in this era and age of collaboration, teamwork, feedback, giving feedback and receiving feedback, right? As well as sometimes, especially as of late, with the company that I work for during the day, with the global supply chain issues over the last 2 years, we've had to deliver, unfortunately, I've had to write several of these types of communications where correspondence isn't always so positive. The 80 drives or motors that you ordered, or electronic relays or contactors, et cetera, that you're expecting to be there for your project whenever, are delayed because of, this and that and there. But you can't just come right out and say that, right? You try to set the scene a little bit in some ways so that you also provide a reason, right? That you're not just saying, hey, your stuff ain't going to be here. Call if you have any questions, right? And you want to make the other person also feel that's not personal, right? You're not doing it despite them. You're not doing anything necessarily purposefully against them. You haven't, you didn't do this necessarily, right? But you're taking a sense of responsibility and care and coming across to that person as very, very professional, right? You got to think about customer service, right? Whether you're not specifically doing anything necessarily for, this might be to a supplier, as I said, or it could be to someone else you're doing business with. It's still important to think about the relationship. Relationship is very important in business, as it is almost anywhere, and your words matter. So starting off with a buffer, right? Depending on what your context is. This here is about saying, that you have to tell this, tell Mr. Waters here that the lease payments that he's been making don't get to apply to the purchase. So anyway, and I'm sure that he's, maybe Mr. Waters has written in. We don't know specifically in this particular scenario that I recall anyway. Oh, yeah. Obviously, we could if we agreed to proposal. Okay, so he's sent a proposal in, and so anyway, we're trying to let him know, the why, right? But of course, obviously, we want to make sure that relationship is there, established through the buffer. Provide him a reason, right? A reason that necessarily isn't so inward looking, but it's just kind of all inclusive. Deliver the bad news with as much care, as possible. But be honest, right? And as nice of a way as possible, right? Deliver the bad news, right? And then closing. And in this particular situation, they're offering, okay, hey, someone's going to call you soon. We're going to continue to do this, right? Let us demonstrate, what we can do for you. So, is still trying to provide an opportunity to keep lines of communication open, even though the news isn't necessarily quote unquote fantastic. So I recall from our scenarios, here, well, some of those might not be at the same level as the Mr. Waters one we just looked at. There's some things here that we need to think about, that we got some information here. We can use some of it. We can not use some of it, right? How do we take that and put in a buffer, give a reason, deliver the bad news, and close on a positive aspect that doesn't make the person feel, in this case, Mr. Cofield, horrible that he didn't get the job. These people, don't want you to leave necessarily. You got some other things going on there, but you need to email him, let him know that you are going to go ahead and leave. And then, this is a tricky one too. When during the pandemic and, corresponding global supply chain issues, even where I work, these were tough to write in some ways to say, hey, there's going to be some changes because of this and that and the other. And, you always had to try to put yourself in the person's shoes who's reading it, right? How are they going to read and interpret what it is that you are saying in this bad news? Because you don't want them just to be focusing on the bad news. Hey, I'm not going to get no more overtime no more, right? I'm not getting this and I'm not getting that. We want to try to soften that blow, especially if there's other opportunities or especially if there's other things that need to be taken into consideration, provide the context so that there's a level of understanding to the person who's reading it. All right, and I have added, since our last video, I finally found my actual folder that had all these, all my awesome business writing resources in it there. So I encourage you to take a look at the general guidelines, especially. The general guidelines can be extremely helpful when I talk about business writing, especially kind of what we've been speaking to. And that's kind of what this exercise is helping us really do, is to think about what kind of tone, right? We want to be positive, right? We don't want to be focusing and not only just on negatives, but we don't want to come across as negative, right? And we certainly don't want to come across as, someone who talks down to somebody. And so some pretty good examples right here, so you didn't read the instructions carefully, thus your system has shut down. So your system has currently shut down. The instructions may contain information to help you restart it. You're kind of saying the same thing, but you're putting a different spin on it. There's even within that one statement there, right? There's kind of a buffer, right? You didn't read the instructions. Didn't start off with and presents the instructions as a solution, right? Conciseness is always good, right? With these business letters and these memos and even with emails, you're not looking for novels or novellas here, right? You want to get to the point and deliver the information, give the buffer the reason, state the bad news in succinctly and in as positive a way as we possibly can. A positive, leave them with a positive note, if you will, and then greetings, a salutation that, try to end on as positive note as you possibly can. Sometimes these can be really tough and challenging to write. Okay, so back here, we're in week 2 here with that. All right, in my next video, we'll talk about